This is an Agile meetup.
Okay, let's. Okay, this is October Safe Meetup at Princeton, New Jersey. We've got a special guest, Richard. He's here. We've got a full house, and what we've done is we've collected. We've talked to the people and collected all the questions and all the topics that people are interested in. So I'm going to hand over to Richard. Would you please tell us a little bit your background, and then we can discuss the questions.
Sure. My background, probably for about 30 years, been involved in new product development, especially in software and systems. And that's one of my favorite things to do is bring new products and services to market. And so started out, as a business analyst, then did software development for a while, and project management for a while, and various executive roles like CIO, CTO, and things like that. And so really got interested in the Agile movement when I saw all the pain that most people are in companies, because it's the environment that's created isn't an environment that's geared for innovation. It's kind of geared for efficiency and not really geared to make people happy. That's often the last focus. So that's how I really got interested in Agile. I led many a death march when I was in project management and other senior leadership roles, and I didn't want to do that anymore. So when the Agile movement started, I was very anxious to see how we can apply this and make people's lives better, so that they can, when they come into work, they really enjoy working. They really enjoy working as a team. So that's kind of my background. And I worked for companies such as CBS and Warner Brothers, IBM. I was there for about 7 years, and a very large company. And you can see all the dysfunction that's in a large company. And I took one of Scaled Agile's classes, and I was kind of hooked as soon as I took the class. I said, this makes sense to me. I can see how we can apply Agile in even large-scale companies. So that's my story. So we have some questions here that the group has come up with, and I'll start with this one here. How do we have predictability in Agile? We always have the, it's done when it's done type of thing. So I hear this a lot, because what I'm hearing is a very undisciplined approach to software development. And to me, that's not Agile. Agile, it should be a very disciplined approach. For example, Scrum ceremonies are very prescriptive, and there is a lot more rigor when it comes to doing things. However, it's easy to misuse any method, whether it's Scrum, Kanban, SAFe, etc. So in SAFe, we are definitely a commitment-based framework. And what I mean by that is that the teams plan. We plan, called PI planning on the big picture. It's over here. And maybe 10 or 12 teams plan together at the same time. And we figure out how we're going to implement about 10 or 12 features during this time box. And the time box is usually about anywhere between 6 and 12 weeks, depending on how often that you can do this face-to-face planning that we do. And so the way we get predictability is we plan together. The people who are doing the work are the ones who estimate the work, and they also figure out what their velocity is for the program increment, which is a larger time box than a sprint. So there are, like, say, 4 or 5 or more sprints to a particular program increment. And so once we do that, we also figure out what our dependencies are between teams. So when you have 10 or 12 teams working together, it's likely that you have dependencies. And what we try to do is, in traditional project management, we on purpose would create all those dependencies to create that Gantt chart, and so we could have that critical path. Well, in Agile, we want to do the opposite. We want to eliminate as much dependencies as possible, because that creates handoffs and delays. So we have a thing called the program board that we use during PI planning, which shows the dependencies between the features and that a team is developing and with what is required from other teams. And what we try to do is reduce those dependencies, and also we kind of make commitments to each other during PI planning. So let's say that this first row here is a team, and that they needed people in the second row to do something, they would walk over to that team during PI planning and say, hey, that API that you're working on, we need this functionality for the feature that we're developing. Can you get this done in sprint 2 or sprint 3? And then if they say yes, well, we record that on the program board, the dependency, and now that team is committing to us that they're going to do their best to get it done during that time frame. Now, one other aspect, we don't want to treat dependencies like we did with traditional project management, where when this team is done, we can do that work. That's kind of a finish to start dependency. Instead, what we want to have is that it's a collaboration point. If I'm dependent upon another team to do our feature, then we should be collaborating as we build a feature, let's say on another team who might be building that API. And we also track the predictability of the trains, and then we try to figure out what is getting in the way of our predictability. It's often the way that we're organized. What I see often is many Agile teams are not truly Agile teams. They're really just a collection of people who've been thrown together. They don't have all the cross-functional skills that they need in order to produce working software. So each team has all the skills they need to deliver functionality end-to-end, not only developing the software, but eventually also being able to deploy and release the software on their own. So that's how we get predictability, and we also track our predictability. I don't know if that answers your question. Okay?
So can you get the mic a little further?
Sure. Is that better?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Next question is,
Can we ask a question?
Yeah. Why don't you write it down and send it?
Just a follow-up question to.
sure, go ahead.
Yeah. So on the spot, so is it safe to say if people say, Agile, we don't plan, we don't predict, we tell them that's BS?
Absolutely.
All right, there you go. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Simple.
Absolutely.
You can have it
I like
from the
that.
master.
All right. So the next question is kind of almost follows on to that. What makes safe safe? So I get this question a lot. Like, what things do we need to do in order to say that we're actually doing safe? And I think there's two answers to this question. The first answer is that, on the framework you'll see core values, lean agile mindset, principles. Those are the things, once you have that mindset and you follow the principles, that's what starts making you safe. You have the lean agile mindset. You have the thinking in everything that you do. So no matter what you're doing it with a lean agile mindset. And we also have things like, we have ceremonies and events. So just like in Scrum, we have Scrum ceremonies like iteration planning, iteration execution, iteration review, and iteration retrospective. But now, since you're working on an Agile release train, which is a team of Agile teams, so if these 5 rows were each teams, we would be an Agile release train, and we would plan together, we demo together, we learn together, is what we do. And we work in these program increments, these time boxes. Each of these is a sprint. In this case, you're seeing 4 regular sprints and 1 iteration and planning sprint. So we have what we call essential safe. And essential safe defines the 10 things that you need to do in order to become that you're actually using safe. And I'm going to go here to the essential safe configuration. And you'll notice something new here. There are these 3 new icons here. And these are new core competencies. And so when you implement essential safe, you will actually be implementing 3 core competencies. The first is the foundation, is lean agile leadership.
Can you zoom to it?
You want to make it larger?
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
So, each of these tabs is a different configuration. So the starting one is essential safe. That's the simplest possible thing that can work when you need to have multiple teams working together to develop a solution. So in many cases, you may need anywhere from 5 to 12 teams to work together to bring a solution. And if you work in a large enterprise, then you need multiple teams in order to deliver a solution to market, especially when you have legacy applications, you have mobile, you have old client server, you have a combination of different things that must all work together to deliver a solution. So we have an article on the framework, and this is under resources, advanced topics. Actually, there's a quicker way to get there. There should be an essential, I'll borrow his glasses a second here. Essential safe article, and it tells you what the elements are. These are the basic things that you must be doing in order to be considered safe. And you'll notice the very first thing is the principles. If you are not following the principles, then you're not really doing safe. What I often find too often is I hear companies saying, we're agile. Well, why are you agile? Well, we do a daily meeting, we do iteration planning. They do the ceremonies, but the mindset is not agile. The way the teams are organized is not agile, because this team here is the requirements agile team. This agile team over here is the development agile team. And that team back there, they're the testing agile team. And then there's yet another agile team. So basically they're just doing waterfall in iterations. That's not what agile is about. So that's why we also concentrate, number 2, real agile teams and trains, which describes what makes a real agile team, which is basically, the short answer is cross-functional, and it has all the roles that's necessary to implement safe. So if you read that article in more detail, you can even learn further about what makes you a safe shop. The next question is about comparison of methods between safe, Nexus, DAD, etc. So I can speak to DAD a bit because I worked on that framework with Scott Ambler. And DAD, basically Disciplined Agile Delivery, is a good framework. And basically what it tries to do, it's a process decision framework. So it gives you all these different options. For example, if you want to do planning, well, how do we plan? Well, it will show you 5 different options for planning. If you want to be retrospecting, it will give you different options for retrospecting. So it provides many different options for you to choose from depending upon the context in which you're working. The size of your organization, are you geographically distributed, and all those things. So they've identified some scaling factors. So the good part of DAD that I like a lot is it's a very flexible framework. However, in order to implement DAD, you really must know how you want to put things together. So you may not get a common language necessarily. You may not get a common way of doing things because there are so many different options that can be implemented. Take Scrum of Scrums is basically just a meeting that multiple teams attend to coordinate. Just like you have a daily meeting, you have a Scrum of Scrums, typically takes place anywhere from 2 times a week to up to every single day, where the teams ask very similar questions to what you would ask a practitioner at a daily stand-up. It has its limitations in terms of it has that one coordination ceremony, but it doesn't necessarily coordinate planning, it doesn't necessarily coordinate, inspect, and adapt. So it's a useful tool, and in SAFE, we recommend a Scrum of Scrums meeting, in addition to what we call a PO sync, a product owner sync, kind of like a Scrum Master, but just product owners. I'm trying to think else. Let's say Nexus and Scrum Upscale. They're also good methods, but they're basically just limited to Scrum. So all solutions no matter what they do, it's Scrum based, so they don't deviate from that. And as we know, just doing Agile is not enough. We also have to use lean methods. So, for example, we have a thing called the House of Lean in SAFe, and it has 4 pillars: respect for people, innovation, relentless improvement, and so it focuses on producing the highest quality solution in the shortest amount of time. So we need, and it also eliminates waste and other things along that line. So just doing Scrum, in my opinion, is not enough at scale. You need to add in other things. Lean, Agile. We also have systems thinking in SAFe as well, because SAFe is a system. The organization itself is a system. The product that we're developing is also a system. So we have to understand that the sum of the parts isn't necessarily equal to the whole. And if we optimize a part of the system, it doesn't mean we're optimizing the whole system. So that's what systems thinking is about, and that was popularized by Edwards Deming. Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask a question when we're sort of talking about DAD and also about cadence and synchronization? So
Sure.
regarding Kanban, so you said Scrum's not enough, and I guess a couple versions back they put in a Kanban team down the bottom.
Right.
And there's always been Kanban up in the portfolio level as well, and any kind of program planning and stuff like that. But so what can you say about Kanban? Because Kanban it's a flow-based system that doesn't necessarily suggest you have a cadence like that, right? Meaning every 2 weeks you sync up and things like that. So what would be the official SAFe perspective on that? Because I'm not sure I've ever seen it.
Yeah, that's a great question. And so one of the things that you point out in SAFe, you can use Scrum, you can use Kanban, you can use XP. What we recommend is a blend of methods. So you would use Scrum along with XP quality practices, along with Kanban. So there is an issue with Kanban in that it doesn't have cadence and synchronization. And what we mean by cadence is schedule. So within SAFe, the default number of iterations within a program increment is 5. And all teams start and stop their iterations at the same time. At the end of an iteration, all teams on the train demo their work as an integrated increment besides doing their team demos. So that provides some of that synchronization in terms of the code. We also have synchronization in planning. We all plan together in one room. Some people call that big room planning. And we also inspect and adapt all together in the same room. So that means the teams are aligned. Because if one team is on 2 weeks, another team is on 3 weeks, and another team is on a 4-week cadence, well, at one point in time can you actually sync up your solution and do a demo? In that case, it would be 12 weeks with all those different cadences. So when you use Kanban within SAFe, typically it's used within the context of Scrumban, where you're using the Kanban board, you're managing your work in process and making it visible, but you're also still having iteration planning and other Scrum ceremonies together. So it's kind of a Scrumban.
Thanks.
Does that answer the question?
I think so, yeah. Thanks.
Sure. Okay, what areas are not appropriate for SAFe? That's a good question. I think if you only had a couple of teams, 2 or 3 teams, that may be too small to use SAFe, the overhead of SAFe. Although you could always leverage some of the practices within SAFe. For example, would it not be good if we were with just 2 or 3 teams to all plan together and to all inspect and adapt together? So I really haven't come across too many instances where SAFe wouldn't be appropriate, and more organizations are starting to use SAFe for other parts of the business. And we have not designed SAFe for other parts of the business at this point, although our company scaled out. We run our entire business using SAFe. We're one large Agile release train where 100 people approximately. You have a follow-up?
And this may be, I think this may be a situation that might not be suitable. What if your teams have drastically different planning horizons? So one of them has a very short planning horizon where others have a longer.
Right. I don't think that would really be a problem because one of the things that we do is that teams develop on a cadence and they release on demand. Meaning that even though we're all planning on the same cadence and we're all developing on the same cadence, you can release multiple times a day, multiple times in iteration, multiple times throughout the PI. So I'm trying to understand that particular scenario where they're on different planning horizons. Like, why wouldn't you want to sync up? Or if they are truly on different planning horizons, are they contributing to the same solution? Or they can, and maybe they shouldn't be belong together as a train. But for example, we have situations where we have a solution that consists of mainframe, it has a GUI, there might be a business rules engine that's kind of the glue between the front end and the mainframe system, or some microservices, etc. And each of those would be appropriate to release at different points in time. So if you have security updates, I want those immediately to be pushed out to production as soon as we've tested those.
What about when you mentioned 5 to 12 teams, let's say, in this?
Yeah.
And then some of them are Agile and some of them say they're not Agile.
Right. So in SAFe, you don't go onto the train unless you're an Agile team.
So
Yeah.
in our larger organization, let's say you need 5 to 12, and some of them, you ask them, they say, we're Agile, we're not. You still have to develop a product together.
Right. So I'll give you an example where how we handle that in some cases that may be appropriate in this case. But what I found is that when you have a mixture of Agile and waterfall teams together, typically the waterfall teams start causing the system to become waterfall again. So that's why I really recommend that the train only consists of Agile teams. However, for example, you might have a supplier who is providing different components. Perhaps you're building a ship, or you're building an airplane, or whatever it might be, or different components of a router or something like that. Sometimes you can't get your supplier to change. So what we'll have is we'll have that supplier work in shorter time boxes and work towards milestones. So they're going to give us a delivery after a month or perhaps 3 months, and then we'll integrate our code after that 3 months. So I think you could probably use some of that type of thinking, but my recommendation would be is get everyone who contributes to that same solution to work as an Agile team. Because otherwise it's just going to fall back to the old ways.
Which is what's happening to us now.
Yeah.
You gotta make everybody inclusive.
Right, and the other things I hear is bimodal. Let's be a bimodal organization. That doesn't work very well. You should be striving to get everyone over to be lean and agile. And it's not going to happen overnight, but there shouldn't be, we're the special people, so we get to do lean and agile, and we don't because we're on the mainframe, and the mainframe can never be agile, which is not true. So that brings us to that question: is how do you do SAFe or lean and agile when you have mainframe development? And of course, that's a bit more difficult because a lot of times it's not people don't want to necessarily change. Is that it's your environments. Do you have an environment where you can actually have multiple environments for testing, and do you have an environment where you can do automation for those mainframe environments? So that's what I find is usually the governor on not being able to do agile development in a mainframe environment is you just don't have multiple development environments and multiple test environments, and so that could be a gating factor. But when I was at IBM, for example, the CICS group there, they developed CICS in using agile methods, and they continue to do so. And I've seen many organizations implement lean and agile practices with the mainframe. And again, that's going to require you to make infrastructure changes to enable that agile development.
What do you mean by multiple development environments, multiple testing? How many do you need?
Well, I mean, it all depends on the solution. But for example, if you only have one test environment, then that could be a difficulty in terms of if you want to continuously be updating your code, you only have one environment. So now you're kind of being bottlenecked by all the teams who are waiting for you to test it and push that production. If you don't have the automation to test it and the automation to build it and to deploy it, that's going to slow things down. So that's the infrastructure that I'm talking about, and that's usually the gating factor. So another question was, how do we manage scale? When do you start safe, and does it really work? So at my company at Scaled Agile, when we got to about 30 people, that's when we decided to drink our own champagne, so to speak, or eat your own dog food, whatever those terms are, and start using our own framework to run our company. Smaller than 30 people, it felt like too much process overhead, although we used parts of the framework even when we were smaller than 30 people. But I was like employee number 8. So with 8 people, you don't need to use a framework like SAFe. Now that said, I'm working with a number of Silicon Valley companies who have under 50 developers. And they approached us to implement SAFe there because they were having trouble coordinating their teams and working towards a common mission, a common vision, having a common program backlog. So they weren't all working in different directions. So, I would say once you get to over like 30 people, perhaps 50, is when you can start considering the use of SAFe, and that you need to work against a common mission and vision. Because if you just throw, sometimes I see this, is organizations will throw 4 or 5 or 10 Agile teams together on a train. But those teams don't have anything to do with each other. They're all working on different solutions. They don't have to have a common backlog. So it doesn't make sense just packaging up people to make them a train when they're not really developing a common solution. And does it work? Absolutely. We have over 40 case studies, and I visited many of these customers. And these case studies, we don't write them, our customers do, and they get real results. And I love visiting our customers and seeing how the environment has changed, to be really much more fun, much more productive, and enjoyable to work. So I would look at our case studies.
Are they online?
Yes, they're online. So on the SAFe site,
And we have some case studies here also. You can take the flyers.
yeah, on our SAFe site, we have on the menu, it says that case studies, and it's sorted by all different things, like industry, geography, all that. So here's a good question. Leadership wants Agile, except engineers. How to get past resistance? I'm not sure whose question this is, but I think this is a common thing. Usually the resistance doesn't come from the engineers. It usually comes from middle management. Usually not executives, usually not practitioners, but usually the middle management, because they're the ones who develop the processes. And the Agile movement, by and large, has passed them by. Like, is there a class for managers in the Agile community? Well, we have one in SAFe. It's called Leading SAFe, and that's for managers, leaders, and executives. But when the Agile movement started, it really bypassed a lot of managers. In fact, Scrum was developed to bypass managers. And so that's where that resistance comes. From the engineers, perhaps they've heard things or tried it and it didn't work well. The other complaint I typically hear from engineers is that we're working 10 times as hard. Because when they're done with one sprint, it's the next sprint. They're done with that sprint, the next sprint. One story's done, the next story's done.